At 8:24 a.m., we continue with the show this morning, and we are now taking a look at food prices. And interesting that the Competition Commission wants to know why. Food prices go up, but they never ever come down. And we have noticed a sharp increase in staple foods in South Africa. How much are the retailers responsible for this, and how opportunistic are they? And we know, for example, just looking at sunflower oil, that is just one example where we've seen how the increase has been far more than a sunflower seed prices this year. And when it comes to prices going up, retailers obviously justify, but we don't see any cost reductions when these prices actually come down. And joining us this morning is economist with the Competition Commission, Kagiso Zwane. Kagiso, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning to you and your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Kagiso, in fact, looking at obviously the Competition Commission, it has expressed concern and also coming against the background of Statistics South Africa, looking at the latest consumer price information. We're talking about fats and oils, bread, cereals, and these carry a high food price inflation at 36.2% and 13.7%. And we know what has happened as far as the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But looking at where we are, how justified is the concern of the Competition Commission?
Thanks for the question. I think as the Commission, we definitely are alive to the fact that the world is in a very tight situation right now, with respect to the supply of food, grains in particular, which feature quite heavily in the exports of Ukraine and Russia, as well as key inputs into agricultural production, such as fertilizer. I think all consumers are also aware of what's been going on at the petrol pumps and have an appreciation of how that might affect the cost of the goods that they buy. As the Commission, our main concern really is that we are dealing with firms with a degree of market power, which is really to say that they are large firms with a lot of pricing power that do have the potential, and we're not saying that they've done this yet, hence our investigation, but they do have the potential to price in a way that is not only reflective of the cost increases that they are being subjected to, but also their market power, and so are being opportunistic and are taking the current situation and the current constrained supply, which does call for higher prices through higher costs, and they are also using that to expand their margins.
Well, certainly, and also this opportunistic pricing behavior, and particularly, Kagiso, if it is not price related, is a major cause for concern because we have learned that South Africans are actually spending less money on food, or there are many that are actually buying food, basic necessities on credit, and this is putting severe pressure on consumers.
Exactly. We obviously are very much aware of the sacrifices that especially the poorest households need to make in terms of meeting their nutritional needs. And in previous reports by the Commission, we have highlighted the fact that these poor households actually had bear more inflation than wealthier households. So we are incredibly concerned about the welfare of these households in particular and the effect that opportunistic pricing might have on them. You can also imagine that a poorer household, because they just have a generally lower budget, does not have the luxury to shop around looking for the best deals. They might only be able to go to the shops on a particular day of the week, and that might not be the day of the week where there is a special. And so they are really in a position where they must accept what is in front of them. And this is why part of the reason why we are concerned about opportunistic pricing is that it has a particularly pronounced effect on the poor and their ability to meet their nutritional needs and their daily nutritional needs, which many NGOs have highlighted is in jeopardy right now because of the price of food.
Exactly. And also, Kagiso, looking at the Commission expressing certain other concerns that are facing South Africans and looking at the value chains And just
Mm.
looking at this value chain, for instance, here using the example of the farm to retail spread in prices, and how these prices along the way actually increase, and also looking at margins in general, because I think this is where the pressure is actually coming from as far as consumers are concerned.
Exactly, exactly. And I think the point, part of the point of this report is to say to consumers, look, don't necessarily look at the farmers who are producing these primary inputs. Let's look elsewhere in the value chain. And that makes sense because this is where the energy is being used. This is where the packaging is being bought. This is where a lot of salaries are being paid. So it makes sense that costs are being applied there and that margins are being applied there. But of course, as I've said, we know that these are very concentrated sectors, and in concentrated sectors, that risk of opportunistic pricing, as well as other anti-competitive behavior such as cartels and price fixing, is a likelihood. And to to get to the bottom of this, we have initiated an investigation and have requested information from the major producers of these commodities. And we're really seeking to understand what has been going on and if indeed the increases that we have seen in the margins in these farm to retail spreads are indeed justified by what's going on elsewhere in the value chain, or if they represent a flexing of market power and of pricing power. It's always
Yes.
that balance that you seek to strike. Of course, the Commission would never go after an entity that has legitimately raised costs. And I think consumers appreciate that in the current environment, cost will rise legitimately. We are concerned in the non-legitimate explanations for cost increases.
Exactly, Kagiso. And my question would be, how much room has the commission got to maneuver? And as you mentioned, there are things within our control. There are those that are external factors that are completely outside our control, like, for instance, the Russian Ukraine, the oil prices, and the supply of wheat. We know those are external factors that have put pressure on pricing. But just looking at the room to maneuver, and also looking at some of the internal factors, particularly where it stands out that retailers are taking advantage of the situation.
So should we decide to prosecute and indeed find that retailers are taking advantage of the situation, we do have room to then ask them to reduce their prices accordingly and therefore bring it back to a price that resembles a legitimate pricing decision and legitimate pricing model. But in addition to that, it's not just a case of returning the prices to normal. We also can impose an administrative penalty of up to 10% of revenue. But I think what's quite important, should we make this finding, is that consumers and retailers will now be aware of the fact that there is a lot of margin that producers may have to play with. And so we can really expect that going forward, retailers may be able to pick this up and drive a harder bargain in engaging with their suppliers to say, look, there has been this finding before. We're not going to accept the price that you have given us on the first go. Let's negotiate, simply because previously you have not engaged in good faith. So that, of course, depends on whether the investigation does indeed yield a finding of anti-competitive conduct.
Mm. And just finally, looking at drop in prices. For instance, we know what the petrol price has been doing in the last few months, and there are indications that these are starting to come down. But again, and this I alluded to right at the beginning, when we talk about prices going up, but they never ever come down. And are we able to put our finger on the pulse and understand as to why these prices are not coming down, even though the indications are there? For instance, the fuel price is obviously one of the contributing factors.
That is definitely something we hope to assess in the future and will form part of this investigation. It's been called the rocket and the feather effect in international literature. Prices go up like a rocket really quickly, but come down like a feather quite slowly. And this is a global phenomenon. and it's influenced by many factors. It includes the fact that some prices, obviously, some input costs change at different rates. So we might, going forward, see a really dramatic decrease in petrol prices, for example, whereas other inputs might not increase that quickly. And so the price effect is not as dramatic as what one would expect if they were only looking at the petrol prices. So, pricing, we appreciate, is a moving picture, and there are many variables at a time that need to be accounted for. But what you say is certainly true, is that, and the consumers do notice it, is that prices are really quick to go up. But when we see that things have gone back to normal, prices are slow to go down. And the Commission's concern is that there could also be opportunistic behavior in that respect, in that retailers and perhaps producers, expecting that consumers are used to a higher price, do not feel that much pressure to reduce prices and instead take a higher margin than they are otherwise entitled to based on the cost of the good.
Well, Kagiso, I must say thank you very much to you for joining us this morning and for unpacking what you have. We definitely will keep our eyes and our ears open on the commission and the work, and also looking at obviously some of the findings with the investigations that are being conducted. But for now, we appreciate your time. All the best to you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Kagiso Zwane, economist with the Competition Commission this morning. The time is just gone 8:35. We come back. We're joined by Firoz Miti Borwala, and we're talking about the BJP lawmaker receiving bail after remarks made against Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.